Hello and welcome to the Favourite Football Podcast. I'm James Killick, and with me tonight are Ellis Ballard.
Yo.
And Benjamin Howard.
Hiya.
How are you both doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Ben, you right?
No, I feel absolutely horrific. We lost 7-0 on the weekend.
Yeah, you did.
Well, just before we start with that, Ben, that is actually going to be the game we start with. Surprise, surprise.
I'll believe it or not, the game where Palace lose 7-0 to Liverpool is the time where Ellis actually turns up. Bloody hell. Well, what are the chances?
What a coincidence.
So just before we begin, just a massive shout out because we've got a 5-star review through. It's from Lily. It's a 5-star and the title is Fun Football Pod. And the description is, love the pod, guys. Keep it up. It's all I need to keep up with this week's action. So thank you so much.
That's nice. Thanks. Lily.
You're such a flower, Lily.
Bit weird. Once again, you've got a girlfriend. Second week in a row. But do remember, obviously, if you're a chance to be read out on the show, leave us a review. Okay, let's get into the action then. I don't know who I'm going to come to first, but we're going to start with Crystal Palace 0, Liverpool 7. Let's go to Ellis.
Yeah, let's. Yeah, I mean, what'd you say about that? It was just an absolute pleasure, to be honest. I think that, our lineup is getting there. Even though, we still have a couple of people out, obviously, Van Dijk and Gomez are going to be out for ages, but even though we actually didn't even play our strongest available lineup, because like Minamino started, you'd argue that maybe Jones is more effective than Keita at the moment because he's playing really well. So yeah, to come away with a result like that was pretty nuts. I think we do have matches where we create like an absolute shit ton of chances, but people like Salah can be really wasteful. It was just one of those days where it felt like every single time we went forward, it was proper clinical. And at least for the first half an hour or so, I wouldn't even say Palace played badly. They had some big chances as well. The scoreline at half-time especially could have looked really different. But, I don't know. It was just one of them days. Absolutely everything went our way. Very little went Palace's way. And it was a lot of fun, don't you think, Ben?
I don't even know how to respond to this. I do agree with you with the first half. Like, if you looked at the first half from a Palace point of view, I would say that was a very harsh 3-0 going into half-time, considering the chances and opportunities we had in that half. So I thought it was very harsh on us to be obviously losing 3-0 at half-time, and it was just a matter of Liverpool being very clinical in front of goal and us reverting back to Jordan Ayew 2K16-17 form and having an absolute mare.
That one where he was through and he just had to square it for Zaha, and it was like
square it or shoot, yeah. Either pass it or shoot, and it's a bit like what I've just processed. And then we had a couple of opportunities as well, and I felt like we were very unlucky not to come away with a couple of goals in that half. But then second half, it just absolutely fell apart.
It did, didn't it? It was a bit mad. I was really pleased Firmino was like banging a couple in. I think his two were some of the nicer goals as well. Was it his first one where like Robertson swung it in and he took one touch and then the outside of the foot just rolled it in? It was fucking nice. Excuse my French. And it was after he got the winner against Spurs as well. So he was been getting some stick. So to see him knocking them in is really nice.
I don't think any of the goals the keeper had a chance with. You can't say that the keeper should have saved any of them. I think all of them were nice finishes where the keeper had no chance. Yeah.
Which is mad, really. 7 goals and the keeper wasn't at fault even a little bit for any of them. It was just...
And 8 of them. You had 8 shots and 7 goals.
Jeez, man. Yeah. Our finishing was it was just crazy. Everyone would just look so on it. I was a little bit nervous for the match. I don't like going away to Palace. I think probably ever since that 3-3 match.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to love Palace coming to Palace again soon. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And then, Spurs only got a point a couple of weekends ago. So, Palace, yeah, you're doing all right this year, right? You're quite hard to play. I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. It was that nasty early kickoff on a Saturday as well, and then we just turned up.
I think you're referring there to the old Cristambull, as it's known.
Yeah, I don't want to call it that. I really hate that. But,
Well, I don't. Yeah, it was a strange one, wasn't it? But I guess it set the tone when Liverpool scored so early. But you're usually quite hard to score against, aren't you, Crystal Palace? And obviously recently we've praised that you're more attacking, aren't you? You don't sit back so much. You do go forward. But why did Ayew start, Ben?
I guess obviously Benteke obviously banned from West Ham game.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't think he has a full trust in Batshuayi. I'm very surprised Batshuayi didn't start, because I felt like maybe if he was in those RU positions, he would have scored, because I think Batshuayi is a bit more clinical in front of goal than RU.
I think he has that reputation, but I don't know when we last actually bloody saw that. I feel like he's a player that carries a little bit of cred with him. But when did he last have a good spell? I don't even remember.
Well, I think the last good spell he had was when he was at us, and that was like 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
But Killick mentioned us being solid to beat. But I mean, I do have to disagree there. We've conceded 25 goals this year. That's like the joint third most amount. I mean, Leeds have conceded more than us. West Brom have conceded more than us, and we've conceded the same amount of goals as Sheffield United. We've only kept 1 clean sheet this year, Palace.
God, it's really surprising to hear that.
Yeah.
And the only time we kept a clean sheet was when Koyate and Dan were our centre backs. And I think that's a huge problem for us, because we've had so many centre back pairings at this stage of the season, and the only pair to get a clean sheet was Koyate and Dan together.
It was Cahill and Koyate, wasn't it?
Yeah, they both didn't have a good game. Pive was at fault for 4 of them goals.
Oh, he's just not a defender, is he? He's like
I mean, what makes me laugh with him is he comes on Twitter, gives it all the bigger and all this. Oh, we'll go again next week. He starts blocking people who say he's had an awful game, but he has been awful for 2 years. He was at fault for 4 of the goals. I mean, the Salah last game, he wasn't even near him. He's like, yeah, you've got the whole goal to aim from. Why not shoot it from outside the box? Nowhere close. And it's a bit like, if you're going to give it out on Twitter saying, oh, energy next game and that, he's like, actually start proving you're actually quite good at football and a left back. I mean, I would say he'd be a better winger than he would be a left back.
Or like a wing back or something, he could do a job, couldn't he? But
yeah.
The only other thing I was going to say about this match, which doesn't really work in Liverpool's favour, but I'm going to say it anyway, is so, I said that Spurs obviously only got a point, and that was 2 weekends ago. But you had fans in then, right?
Yeah.
You had 2,000 fans in. And that, especially a place like Palace, where the fans make such a difference, like that is obviously such an advantage for Liverpool. Is that at the moment our closest rivals in the league? Well, not today now, but it was at the time. They go to a place and they have a tricky match, and there's 2,000 angry South Londoners screaming at them, and they only come away with a point. And then we show up to a nice empty stadium on like a sunny Saturday afternoon, and we have a chilled out time of it. It's going to be a weird theme this year, isn't it? When there's like fans in some places and not in other places, and there's no denying that in some ways it's going to give some teams an advantage, because it's definitely worked out for Liverpool the last couple of weekends.
Yeah, I don't think it helps Liverpool scoring in the 3rd minute either, very early on, and I think that kind of set the tempo for the game. And if you haven't got fans in there cheering you on to come back, then maybe it's always going to be a hard ask for them to come back into a game.
That's the sort of thing that might not happen if you did have fans in, though, right? Because Liverpool would be a bit more intimidated, or might start a bit slower, and Palace would be more pumped and more willing to just clear their lines and whatever. I mean, obviously all of that is speculation, but yeah, the whole fans in some places and not others is weird at the moment. I think Liverpool is one of the only places left in the league where
and Brighton as well.
Fans, yeah, which is, I mean, wicked for us. But if we go on to win the league this season and people look back on it and point to things like that, it's quite hard to argue that it's not an unfair advantage, because right now it feels a bit like that. But working for us.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in a position, because we've seen areas, and obviously for our international listeners, you're maybe not as aware here, we've got a tier system. So once you get to a certain tier, you can't have fans, etc. London's now obviously it's in tier 4, isn't it? So That's the end of that for any London clubs. That's not happening again for a very long time. But other areas as well have gone to 2 to 3, for example. So I can't see that lasting on, which is a shame, because obviously we were so excited to have everybody back, weren't we? And then it was like 1 weekend for most clubs, no fans. Oh, it's not fun. I'm laughing, but it's just typical, isn't it? Typical of the times, I guess. But yeah, Minamino scored, didn't he? We mentioned that Ellis was speaking to you earlier. Goal in 3 minutes, and it was a very composed finish, wasn't it? It was nice.
Yeah, it was nice. It was. He sort of took an extra touch to compose himself, and then he smacked it in that bottom corner. It was nice. It was exactly what he hasn't been doing very well so far. He just seemed to flick a switch and be able to relax a bit and take that extra touch to set himself up. I think Klopp was making a big deal this week about really bigging him up. I think he's a player that maybe just needs that arm around the shoulder and someone to boost his confidence. I think in Klopp's kind of pre-match notes in the program or something like that, I read he was basically just talking about Minamino. Because I think it was exciting when we bought him. I think probably because he was just so cheap as well. So we were all like, yeah, what a bargain, this is going to be great. But it's been a year and it feels like he hasn't properly built that momentum yet. But yeah, we'll see what happens from here. I think what doesn't work in his favour is that his competition is Mane, Firmino, or Salah, or Jota now as well, because he's not really a midfielder. He needs to be in one of those front three positions. So when you're competing with that standard, it's hard enough to get minutes. You basically have to score a hat-trick in a game to even compete.
Yeah, especially when you see Salah. Obviously, his goal from outside the box, Ben, the one you referred to, wasn't closed down, but still that finish. I mean, what can you do about that? Beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can't do anything about it. Maybe if he was a bit closer, that's the thing with Salah. If you give him time, he will punish you, and he did. I mean, he came off the bench and he assisted and scored 2 goals.
He was, that's like everyone else. He was so clinical, but that's what I mean. He can be wasteful, Salah. I don't know all the stats, but I bet if someone can find a stat that's like amount of big chances Salah has missed or something like that, I guarantee it's quite high, even though he scores a lot. Because we create so many chances for him, and he's not always got his shooting boots fully on, which sounds mad because he's like always competing for golden boot and that. But I'm telling you, he does miss chances. Whereas, in that half an hour he had or whatever, it was just like, it was mad. It was so fun to watch, obviously.
Yeah, I think there's a few players like that, though, isn't there, that score a lot of goals. But do you remember we did I don't think it was part of the podcast, but we were looking at the stats, I think, from last year, or it was the year before, and Aguero actually missed the most chances in the league. And again, you're like, that's kind of weird. And I remember, obviously, Andy Cole used to get quite a lot of heat, didn't he? Because it would say he takes 2 or 3 chances to score a goal. But then if you look at his record, he absolutely smashed it. So it's sort of a theme with them sort of players. Always in the right position, I guess, aren't they? So still pays off in the end. Okay, let's move on then from that game before Ben gets too upset. And
please.
It's time for me to be upset. So let's go to this game now of Everton 2, Arsenal 1. Benjamin, what do you think?
Oh, Arsenal. Where do you begin with Arsenal nowadays? It seems to be kind of the club that everyone is mocking nowadays. But obviously it doesn't help when you're going down to an own goal and then you're conceding from set pieces. But Arsenal did have more of the possession, but they didn't really seem to create enough chances from it. It's what we've been saying for them for a while. Where is that creativity and that spark?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I can't really say much about that. I mean, we did have 13 shots, 2 were on target, but Everton also had 2 on target as well. So you can't really argue with that. And we were not clinical. And I don't know what's happened really, to be honest.
To be totally honest, I didn't see a lot of this match, or I had it on, I wasn't concentrating or whatever, I don't know. But what was your lineup like? Was Aubameyang in the middle? Was Lacazette on?
No, Aubameyang was out injured.
Yeah.
Oh, was he? Oh,
Aubameyang was out injured. Gabriel was banned. Xhaka was banned as well. Thomas Partey, he has an injury still. So they were playing ideally they were playing 3 at the back with Maitland-Niles and Saka as wing backs, and then El Neni and Ceballos in the middle, which for me is very quite conservative, and that they're not going to be able to unlock defences or that for them. And then Nketiah, who's still a young guy, and Willian, who hasn't done anything
I did see. I saw one of the things I did notice was a stat popped up for him, and it was like he's had 1 shot on target in the last 12 matches or something mad.
And this guy's on 200 grand a week.
Oh, don't.
Well, he had a good first game, didn't he? I don't know if you remember our first game this season. Everybody went, well, of course he's a good player. It's Willian. Of course they signed him. He had an absolutely incredible game. And since then it has dropped off.
I think the only positive Arsenal can take is that Martinelli has come back.
We'll see what he's like. I just remembered one of the other moments that really caught my eye. It was right in the dying minutes. Arsenal were fighting away for an equaliser, and Maitland-Niles did something down the right hand channel. It was pretty nice, and he flashed this ball across the face of goal. It was 4 yards out, and it went all the way through. And I just remember thinking, who is the striker and where is he right now? This is the last minute of the match. You're throwing everything at it to try and get an equaliser, and that cross was perfect. It literally just needed anyone to get any sort of contact, and there was no one anywhere near it. And I was just thinking, who is that out and out goal poacher for Arsenal at the moment? It just feels like there isn't one.
I think I've noticed with our play, when Arteta first came and he first managed the first few games, because before that we were trying these dangerous balls and it wasn't paying off. We were wasteful with possession sometimes, and we certainly had more issues at the back. What I think he brought when he came was, look, keep it simple. If there's a pass on to your right, pass it to the right. Pass on to your left. It was all very just simple. Pass it, everything just rolled. But the problem is now, we need to do something else, because a lot of the stats for the passing, Xhaka, for example, who obviously didn't play in this game, but he's been a mainstay in that midfield. He's had a ton of passes and almost no chances created. So he's not doing anything with the ball. You're getting it, recycling it. What you need to do is you need to get it up there. And I think there's no justification for Arsenal to be where they are in the table, 15th, and of course with the laughingstock. I mean, we were the laughingstock when we used to finish 4th, let alone now. Right, this is taking it to a new level, but we need to do something. And our players, it's a weird mix of players. Like when you look at the lineup that we had, obviously Leno, okay, he's all right, Holding, David Luiz, I mean, he's dumb really, isn't he? Willian, we mentioned, he's an older player. And then you look for the rest of the players and you think, who else would actually sign them? El Neni, for example. We saw him had one good game, didn't we? Maitland-Niles, good potential. Obviously, Saka, good youngster. Pepe hasn't taken off. Nketiah, still young. And then you think, is the squad good enough, really? Lacazette, he's just, for me...
Yeah, when you look at that bench as well, Bellerin, he's not really lived up to his potential. Kolasinac, he's not done anything. Lacazette, who I think has been a failure at Arsenal, compare him to what he was like at Lyon, where he was an ice-cold finisher. He can't even hit a barn door at Arsenal.
I was worried about Lacazette. I was like, oh crap, that could be a game changer. And it absolutely has not been.
But you look at the Arsenal bench, who's an actual game changer now? Willock, Cedric, Smith-Rowe, Wijnaldum, Mustafi, Martinelli, Lacazette, Kolasinac, Bellerin. The only person you would say that could make a difference is Martinelli.
Exactly, and he's still unproven. If you look at, we've got a lot of players on our team who we just need to get rid of. Mustafi, absolute deadwood. Cedric, we've signed him for, I don't even know why.
I liked that signing. I really rated him. He's the Southampton right back, wasn't he?
Yeah, but
I remember I thought you did a really good job there when you signed him. But then it's a weird signing because Bellerin is such a first choice right back, and then so I guess this Cedric guy is below him and Maitland-Niles in the pecking order. So all right, maybe it's a weird signing, but
yeah,
I didn't mind that as a signing. But then also people like Mustafi, if you sell him, who's your next choice centre back? Will it be some kid or something? Like you do need those options.
Well, Saliba was bought, but he's not had a look in.
I wouldn't say though necessarily this season. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe a slightly in perspective. I don't think we are sort of conceding them sort of comical Arsenal goals though. I feel like that has changed. I mean, that is a positive. Yes, okay, we had the own goal from Aubameyang, but I mean, no one can really do anything about that. We had the own goal from Holding, which is just one of them freak things that just seems to happen, especially when you're sort of down on your luck a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not that side that's worrying me so much. It's going forward, and it's a big issue obviously because we've just signed Aubameyang on a big contract. Could not stop scoring goals, and obviously we saw him score in the FA Cup final, didn't we, and things like that. And now we're hardly even getting the ball to him when he does play. So big problems, I think, for Arsenal.
The other thing we probably should say is that there's not actually a lot of shame in losing to Everton this year. Apparently they're really good.
Yeah. Let's move on to Everton. So Pickford back in goal. Obviously, didn't have a particularly bad game. Sigurdsson, he's back in the lineup, isn't he? And he's looking quite good because I thought maybe he'd be one of the players who sort of fell away from this. Even Iwobi looked good, which is worrying because
yeah, well, because we all know that Doucouré, Alan, Rodriguez, and who was they starting near? It was Gomez, wasn't it? The other guy they were starting a lot. But like we were saying earlier in the season, all their new signings, we were like, damn, what a midfield.
Yeah.
Actually, on Saturday it was Doucouré, Davies, Iwobi, and Sigurdsson. It was almost like a B choice midfield, and they still managed to do all right.
It was still enough. No, but it was good because Everton obviously they had a little drop off, didn't they? But I mean, the results now not so bad.
Well, they're fourth in the league. Although we're saying they've dropped off, but they're fourth in the league, and that's pretty impressive for Everton to be there at this stage of the season already. And they've already beaten all the London sides this year.
3 wins on the bounce now, isn't it? Their form is 3 wins, 1 draw, and obviously that loss. So,
and the way we were just comparing, we were just talking about Arsenal squad depth or whatever. If you look at Everton's bench, Kenny, Tosun, Bernard, Coleman, Gordon, Branthwaite, Olsen, Lossell, and Kunku. I don't know how to say that, but I've barely ever heard of any of those players. I've heard of Tosun, but I've heard that he's rubbish. But and we're talking about Everton sat pretty in 4th place. Yeah. I like Coleman actually; he's been a great player for years. But it's funny sometimes. I mean, look at teams that outperformed them last year. People like Sheffield and Wolves that really went way above and beyond people's expectations. Sometimes you look at these squads and, you might not have heard of half of them. So when we're looking at our Arsenal bench and we're saying, oh yeah, Bellerin, Lacazette, Mustafi, Cedric Suarez, Martinelli, that's a wicked bench, really. If we're comparing it to the bulk of the league, at least we've heard of all those players.
True.
It's funny. We're so critical of the top teams and their benches, but then you've got a team like Everton that are completely outperforming themselves and sat in a Champions League spot. And there's a bunch of kids on their bench or people we've not heard of.
I mean, I'd probably take Coleman. He'd probably be our best defender. But obviously, Arsenal, the last couple of years, they've restructured him, but there seems to be a bit of an issue with, maybe the recruitment. Obviously, if you question Willian, did we have to spend that money when we've got like Reece Nelson, for example, who doesn't seem to be sort of looked behind Pepe and then sort of now obviously he's behind Willian as well. We've had, as I said, Edu in this role, which he doesn't really have the experience in. We've changed how we're running the club sort of 3 times in the last year, the way we're doing it. And now there's sort of 2 guys above Edu, and now Arteta's the manager and not the head coach. We did that straight after the FA Cup. It's so knee-jerk, isn't it? Do you think Arsenal should keep Arteta? Do you think this is an Arteta problem, or do you think it's the club?
You can't change everything straight away. It's a process, and things take time. I think Liverpool is maybe a good example, because they obviously were bought out by John Henry, the FSGS group, or whatever they're called. Ellis, who they're owned by Liverpool.
FSG,
yeah, FSG. And you saw a lot of the seasons they were finishing 7th, 8th, and not really kind of pushing. But then I think they kind of had to restructure their model with all this money ball and analysis into players, and it took Liverpool a while to maybe get into the position where they are now and finding that right coach. And maybe Arteta does need time, and Arsenal, with this restructure, it will need time to help prosper.
Yeah, I think it's hard to imagine that Arteta is not a good coach. I just think the kind of player he was, the education he had, sat alongside Pep. I think we can all. There's some managers you look at and you think they just seem clueless. Like for me, Solskjaer seems clueless. And then Arteta, just he seems switched on and he knows what he's doing. And I don't know, that's just that's pretty superficial. I'm not basing that on a lot. But even if he is a wicked, unbelievable coach, manager, and he's going to go on to do great things, I do think that maybe you can become think of it as a workplace. It can become kind of toxic. They're sat in 15th. The relegation zone is not even that far away. They're getting all these red cards. Nobody is living up to their potential. Nobody is standing out and performing well. I reckon turning up to that training ground at the moment, it's not going to be a fun place to be. And to dig yourself out of that kind of environment is almost impossible sometimes, I think. It takes a pretty special person to turn a team spirit around like that. So even if Arteta goes on to have a beautiful managerial career, it might be that things have just got a bit too sour at Arsenal, and a fresh face is what's needed to sort of lift everyone up,
Yeah, we do see it with clubs who've had a manager for such a long time, don't we? How many years it can take to sort of repair. Obviously Manchester United went through the same sort of thing, didn't they? And they've skipped through a couple of managers, and they're doing obviously well at the moment, 3rd in the Premier League, aren't they? But it has taken some time. I don't think it helps Arsenal with the distractions with Ozil. Suddenly everybody wants him in, and obviously Ozil's got such a following generally online that's I think going to cause a headache for Arsenal. And also when you're creating no chances, and the guy that you're not even putting to your squad, he's got some of the highest assist records of all time in so many leagues, people are going to ask questions. And when you see,
and he's earning more money than anyone else. When can it change? Can they revise that in January or something?
Yeah, we can revise in January. But then you look at the bench and you think, well, he put Emil Smith Rowe into the Premier League squad, and then that sort of makes you question it. Well, come on, man, what's he going to do? Do you know what I mean? You might as well have Ozil there, but maybe just wanting to completely get rid and get him out of the club, and ostracising the player sometimes is the way to do it. It doesn't always work. And I don't think Ozil will be going anywhere this season, at least.
Would you be if it was announced in January he's going to be back in the squad, and then he's if he's chucked into some first choice lineup, would that excite you? Do you want to see that, or not really?
No, I thought it was a big mistake to sign him on the big deal when we did, because I thought he physically couldn't bring what we needed, And a lot I heard people actually saying sort of, oh, Arsene Wenger signed him on that big deal. Arsene Wenger didn't sign him on that deal. He even said, I wouldn't have signed him on that sort of money. Clearly, he wouldn't sign someone on 350 grand a week. But it's just caused a massive headache. And as you say, obviously changing from Emery, and that was sort of, he was a laughing stock, and Arteta's come in. And look at our form the last few games. Loss, draw, loss. I mean, we're not far off. Look at Burnley, for example, in the last 18th at the moment on 10 points, but they've got 2 games in hand. So technically, if they win them 2 games, we're going to be behind Burnley, who, let's not forget, in the transfer discussions, we were saying, oh, Sean Dyche, what is he going to do? They're so screwed. They could be above us. So,
my goodness, the madness.
Yeah. Well, that's enough Arsenal talk. I try and avoid it, but just where it was today in the running order. We're now just going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do the other games. See you in a moment.
To keep up to date with the show, follow and contact us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Favourite Football Pod. Email us at hello@favouritefootball.com. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/favourite football. Also, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review. Name and shame us.
And we're back with a brand new wrap. Right, let's go straight into the action then. Let's do Tottenham 0, Leicester 2. This was a big game, wasn't it? Especially for Tottenham, title contenders potentially. I said last episode. Dropped a couple of places now. What do you think, Ben?
When we say they've Spursed it, I mean, when usually Tottenham usually mess up or something messes up, we go, they've done a Spurs. I mean, can we say they've Spursed it, or is it too early?
It's too early, but yeah.
What do you think, Ellis? What do you think of the game?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it is funny how quickly things turn around. Like, 2 weeks ago, was it? Spurs were top on goal difference. And you look at them and you think, like, they're just this machine of counter-attacking football and so hard to score against, and then just give it to Son or Kane and it's basically a goal. And then suddenly it goes like Palace, Liverpool, Leicester. And, they're outside of the top 4 right now, which is a bit mad. But then, on the flip side, I think Leicester, it wasn't just, we've seen Spurs play recently where they have like 10% possession and they set up in their own box and then they just do you on the counter. It wasn't that extreme, but it did look to me like Leicester's game plan was to try and hit them on the counter. And when you got Jamie Vardy up front, like, you're pretty set in that respect. I thought they played really well. I thought Maddison looked really good. And Spurs just looked a bit lacking. Yeah. I mean, they would get it to Son or Kane and Ndombele, and I don't know, it wasn't very sort of threatening looking. It looked a little bit, I don't know if they're tired, or that's what you would say about that squad is rotation in an attacking sense isn't really possible. Like, they have to start Son and Kane every match basically, because if one of those doesn't start, there's a massive dip in form. So maybe they're tiring a bit, but I don't think their title challenge is over. I'm sure they'll go on another run, but definitely a bit of a bad patch.
Yeah, Ben, you don't think they're title challenges either, do you, from the last podcast?
I mean, they've lost 3 games, and the 3 games they've lost have been to sides above them. They lost to Everton first game of the season, they lost to Liverpool at top, and now Leicester in a second. So, yeah, it kind of seems maybe their kryptonite is facing top teams this year, where obviously we know how they like to be on the counter-attack, but maybe we're overhyping them how good they are. Maybe when they do come across the top teams, they maybe just missing that little something.
They played quite a lot of the big teams this season, though, didn't they? Or the bigger teams in the Premier League. You say they played Everton, didn't they? Obviously had a good season. They played Chelsea, Manchester United. They played, haven't they? Manchester City, Liverpool. So they've got a few of them difficult games they've had. Early Arsenal, of course. So all tough games. They could still turn it around. I think they've still got potential. But the only problem is when you play the Jose way, should we say, and it pays off. It's great, isn't it? It must be great for the fans, and they held back, they took sort of the punishment, and they still won on the break and stuff. But when it goes the other way, like this game, you never really felt Tottenham were ever going to come back into it, did you?
I think you used the key word there. I think at his time at Chelsea and Madrid and Milan, that Jose Mourinho way always won. Always, no matter what. But then at United and Spurs, it's if the Jose Mourinho way they play. And it's kind of a bit like, maybe his tactics or teams are sussing out what he does. I mean, we all think he's a fantastic manager and that, but using the term if compared to the Jose Mourinho way always used to win, but now sometimes it doesn't.
I think there's a question over like personnel, in my opinion. I think I'm not sure that Dyer is a world class centre back. I mean, until recently, he wasn't even a centre back. Lloris has mistakes in him, which is mad considering he's like captained his country to the World Cup final. But him, I've never put him in like top 5 goalies in the world personally. No. Aurier attacking is good. I mean, he was at fault for the penalty today. It was a really bizarre, like, just ran over and barged the bloke in the back for no reason in the penalty area. Like, he's just got that mistake in him. And then I think it was Reguilon today, or Ben Davies plays sometimes at left back. I mean, fine, I suppose they're solid enough. And then Alderweireld is possibly past his best. I don't know. When you compare that, like Ben, you just said, compare it to the old Chelsea team where it was like Terry and Carvalho and Ashley Cole and Peter Cech. Like, there's no comparison, is there? It's like it's leagues apart. So I think if you can play that style of play when you have a world class defense, but he does not have a world class defense. So, you know, they're always going to concede goals, I think.
Do you think, though, that is possibly why I mean, obviously he does play more reserve football, doesn't he, generally, but do you think maybe that's why he is playing like that, especially with this Tottenham team, almost flipping it round, saying, well, you know, if we expose Dyer, if we expose, obviously, the lack of pace in Alderweireld now, obviously he's getting a bit older, isn't he? And as you say, Lloris isn't always at 100%, and there's mistakes from the right from Aurier, although he has been better recently than obviously at first when he came. It was just a calamity, wasn't it? Keeping Doherty out of the team at the moment, obviously, and Reguilon's a good player. Do you think maybe that's why they sit back and obviously they have that shield in front, don't they, with Sissoko and the you know, Højbjerg, the hard-working midfielders? Maybe his thought is, if we go forward a lot, actually, this could end up a lot worse. Or
it depends how you look at it, because as much as what you just said makes sense, but if you're playing a much more attacking style of football, then theoretically you'll be at the other end of the pitch a lot more, and the defenders can just chill. Whereas if you're always inviting pressure on, they're going to have a lot more work to do. So I don't know. I guess it depends on your outlook on it.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. But Leicester, obviously, a good win. I mean, are they title challengers? The last time they beat Spurs, they won the title. So
I wouldn't say they're title challengers, but I would say they're definitely a shoo-in for top 4 again. I mean, hopefully they're able to do the job this time around, because obviously they kind of fluffed it towards the end of last season, but it's good that they're getting key players back as well. Castagna was back in the lineup today. You had the midfield 2 of Tielemans and Ndidi, which is a very solid midfield 2, I would say as well. And I think that's why they were able to kind of compete with Spurs, because obviously we know that Højbjerg and Sissoko, they're so athletic and they can stay back and they're strong players. But Ndidi and Tielemans can basically do the same job, and they can spray a ball around as well. And if you're playing balls over the top of Vardy, he's always going to get there with his pace as well. And he caused them so many issues.
They got a bright team, and as Ellis mentioned, Maddison's looked good, isn't he? He's come back into form. I mean, was injured for a bit, wasn't he? And maybe at one point he was overhyped. I guess who isn't when you're English and you're, you know, playing quite well for an amount of time. But they've got some good players in that team, and you do think, could they, with teams being more inconsistent this season and the strange nature of the season, could it happen again? I don't know, maybe. You can...
Not for me.
No?
Yeah, I think it's the first time that Brendan Rodgers has beat Jose Mourinho as well.
It is. Yeah. And the top
first 4, I think if they don't finish top 4, they should kick themselves. But I would be really surprised if they're in a title race come like the last few weekends. Could easily be wrong, but that'd be my bet.
It's fair enough. Okay, let's move on then from that game, shall we? We're going to go through the other results here. So the first one we're going to go through on the Saturday was Southampton 0, Manchester City 1. Bit of a cagey game, wasn't it, this one? But a good, obviously 3 points for City in a time, obviously they dropped points, didn't they, to West Brom. Questions being asked, but to get a point away at Southampton, and Southampton obviously been fantastic this season. A good 3 points, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. That looks like a really hard fixture this year, like you say, away to them. And I think Ings had to go off early because his injury tweaked or whatever, and I do think they are much less of an attacking force without him. But yeah, credit to City. I think to grind out a clean sheet there is not easy. So yeah, fair enough.
I think John Stones deserves praise as well, because he was written off as well, and he had quite a solid game. So he seems to be back in favour, and I mean, Port doesn't seem to be really getting a chance in that team now, does he?
Yeah, that's mad. He was like the only one that was any good last year, and now he's not really playing. Ake barely plays. I mean, I guess perhaps he was never going to just walk into the starting 11, but yeah, if Stones has fought his way back into that starting lineup. Fair play.
Stranger the Manchester City defence. I mean, it's a bit strange anyway, isn't it, with the amount they spend and the results. But obviously, we had, as you say, Laporte last season having been so instrumental, wasn't he, and such a solid player, fantastic player. And then he sort of dropped for stones. And it reminded me of when, do you remember I think the first time they won the league under Guardiola, and Otamendi was a mainstay, and his passing stats were mad, and he had a good season, even though you always sort of questioned him maybe a little bit. And then the next season rolled around, and he was just completely dropped. And it's kind of the same now with Laporte, isn't it? Suddenly Stones is in. But as you say, Stones, I think he started the last 5, and he's looked good. It's good to see. Everyone knows he can play. And I heard an interview of Raheem Sterling as well, of Mika Richards, which was really cool. And he was saying, John Stones can be the best. He just needs to sort of get his head screwed on a little bit. So let's hope we see the best of him, especially when you look at England's defence coming to the Euros. And we really, we need numbers back there, don't we?
And our World Cup run that went so well, I feel like he was quite important, wasn't he? He's clearly got all kinds of ability. Like, we've seen that for such a long time now. I thought probably the summer just gone, I thought he would have benefited from just taking a step down a little bit so he could play week in, week out somewhere. But yeah, if he's going to wind up doing that for City, then hats off to the chap.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on to the next game, Newcastle 1, Fulham 1. I guess the result okay for both teams. Obviously, Fulham had a red card, didn't they? And half an hour, Newcastle had a chance to play against 10 men. They just didn't create enough, did they? Although they had quite a lot of attacking players on the team, it just wasn't enough.
That pen was...
that wasn't a pen at all.
No, yeah, Newcastle's goal. Even watched Match of the Day last night, and Jermaine Jenas was basically like, yeah, that's straight up a dive. And it really was. It was hard to say anything other than that. Callum Wilson was just really looking for it. And I guess without that pen, if Fulham managed 3 points away from home, that would have been huge for them. But they've become much harder to play as well. I feel like they've turned the corner a little bit. Obviously, Liverpool only managed a point at their place. They're giving themselves a chance, I'd say. I think a point at St James's for Fulham is not a bad result.
I think they could feel very hard done by, though, because that's what is decided at the end of the day. I don't get how you can get that wrong as an official and to see that it's a dive and not even in the penalty box either. And it's just a bit like he has every right to be aggrieved by it, because that could be a vital 3 points for them come end of the season if they had gotten them. But we can keep seeing signs of improvement for them as well. And it's obviously a lot of us wrote them off at the beginning of the season, but then they're still pushing, aren't they?
Well, the last 5 games, they've got 3 draws, a loss and a win. Obviously, it's not championship winning form, is it? But of course, only 1 loss in the last 5 games. They do look more difficult to play, as you say. I think they're finding their rhythm a bit, which is nice, because you don't want them to be sitting down there. Obviously, Burnley are the team below them in 18th with 2 games in hand, as I previously mentioned. So, still got a way to go, but it's good. They're out of it, and they've certainly looked a bit stronger than the other teams down there at the moment at times. So we'll have to see how they get on with that. So moving on from there, Brighton 1, Sheffield United 1. Ben, obviously we mentioned that Brighton just can't win games. Sheffield United just can't win games, and it was a draw.
Yeah, Brighton, you lucky buggers.
Brighton in the end was that boy Welbs.
For me, Lundstrom's red card wasn't a red card for me.
Oh, look, I thought it was.
I thought he got the ball first, and I feel that's where tackling is going out the game. If you're getting the ball first, you can't do anything about a follow through.
Yeah, but if your studs are up and you basically go through the bloke's ankle.
But you got the ball first, though. You can't, if you get the ball first, you can't control what's going to happen after.
You can if you basically break the guy's ankle afterwards. Like Veltman went off injured. If his studs were probably planted in the ground, he would have wrecked his ankle.
Nah, for me, that's not a red for me.
It was out of control, man. He just it happens so often. It was because he had a loose touch, wasn't it? Lundstrom, he had a slightly loose touch. He was about to lose the ball, so he threw himself because he didn't want to lose the ball. That so often that is the case just before a reckless tackle, is because they just had a little bit of a loose touch and they don't quite want to let the ball go. But yeah, I mean that was for me. But yeah, Webs. I felt really bad. I don't give a crap about Brian. I felt really bad for Sheffield because once they went down to 10 men, you thought there was 100% game over. But doing that kind of, they had to play on the counter-attack, obviously, from that point onwards, and they did it, and that young lad scored on his debut, and it was all looking really good, and then bloody Welbeck. And then actually Brighton smashed the crossbar in the dying seconds, didn't they? So they could have had all 3, but yeah, I mean, Sheffield still doubled their points tally, so.
Yeah, though we're working out the average of the points because obviously we're pretty much a third of the way through the table, aren't we? And the projected points for Sheffield United, should points stay as they are, they'd end up with 3 points. I mean, imagine that, because obviously Derby are the holders, aren't they? And I say that like it's an achievement. I guess kind of is. You might as well hold on to it. I'd own it.
Well,
3
you can look
points.
at it this way at the moment: 2 points from 14 games, or 2 points from 42.
Well, wait, what?
2 points out of 42 points.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought we meant out of 42 games or something.
That sounds horrific. I mean, 2 out of 14 points doesn't sound bad, but when you go 2 points out of 40, a possible 42, then that sounds horrific.
Yeah,
I was watching Brewster today because they spent a lot of money on him by their standards, and I wasn't even sure I wanted him to leave, and I thought maybe he'd be a good backup for, Firmino or whatever. And he's barely been playing. They took him off. Like, he's going to be a championship player, and maybe
I don't think he's been given a chance. I don't think it's a Sheffield United side which is going to create a lot of chances for you to score as an attacker. I mean, look how defensive the lineup is: Baldock, Basham, Egan, Robinson, Stevens, Fleck, Ampadu, Lundstrom, and McGoldrick. Who's going to get you goals or supply you to get goals in that lineup?
He should have thought about that before he went, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
If he looked at that squad and that lineup and that style of play and thought, well, that's not going to work for me, then he shouldn't have gone. But he went because he wanted to start for a Premier League team, and now he's not even starting for them, I think.
Brave for him to go. Yeah, it's brave for him to go, but you do kind of think if you stay in the Liverpool team and you play sometimes, you're going to get service and probably score a few goals, aren't you? If you move, to a lower club, and I think of someone like, for example, Origi, who's obviously now sort of built himself legend status at Liverpool, isn't he, for not doing much, but just sort of being there and being that guy who comes on, for the club. Because you imagine if, for example, Origi did go to a club like that, the results would be very similar, wouldn't they? You couldn't see him taking it by storm. So it's brave he went, and we'll have to see what happens. I mean, it's hard to say, but it's unlikely now Sheffield United are going to stay up unless there is an absolute miracle. But we've still got a way to go. So who knows who they sign. Moving on from that game then, obviously we had a classic game here. This reminds me of the old ones we used to watch, doesn't it? Manchester United 6, Leeds 2.
Damn.
It was demolition, wasn't it? Straight from the off, McTominay with a lovely
turned
finish.
into like prime Cantona or something today, McTominay. It was mad. He just strolled through the defence and slotted it home like a couple of times. Yeah, United played, in a sense, it was similar to what Liverpool did on Saturday. It just felt like every time they went forward, they was going to score. Mad.
Yeah, United are in fantastic form as well. They won their last 2, drew the one before that, and won the last 2 before that. So they're really hitting some form, aren't they? And this is sort of Solskjaer's tenor, this season in sort of microcosm, isn't it? The highs and the lows. So high and so low. And obviously they dumped out of the Champions League, and I guess it's a good response to it, isn't it? Because it could all fall apart, but it hasn't. You've got to give them some credit where it's due, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due. They beat Leeds 6-2, but then obviously Palace beat them 4-1 as well. So it's not hard to beat Leeds by lots of goals at the moment, because you can see what the issue is with Leeds. They seem to get so many bodies going forward, but defensively, they're all at a massive crossroads. And if you're conceding 2 goals in the first 3 minutes, then you're always going to fight an uphill battle. And then United just capitalised on that, and they just made basically Leeds surrender. And you have to give credit to United for playing well and basically onslaughting Leeds.
If United have a game in hand, if they win that, they are second, only 2 points behind Liverpool. So, all things considered, they're well in the title race. You've got to say that.
I don't know how, because we always seem to slate them every single week.
I think it's just because it's fun.
If you look at Leeds, I mean, it is a bit comical back there. And as I said, it surprised me, Ben, when you said how many goals that Palace had conceded. It's not surprising me when I look to see Leeds have conceded the most in the league, because it is not good enough, is it? I like their goalkeeper. I think every time he seems to make a little error, he seems to get jumped on, but he's a young guy, and I think he's playing way above his level very well. So I think he's fine. But the structure of the team, like you say, flooding the box, yeah, that's cool, but teams can counter you in this league big time, especially Manchester United, who, they have at their best when they're countering, obviously with the pace of Rashford and Bruno Fernandes through there and etc. I mean, even Dan James scored today, didn't he? So
yeah, I don't think it helps Leeds if you sign 2 guys in the summer, who you want to play at the back, like Koch and Llorente, and they're not there, it's always going to be difficult because Alien, he's a right back by nature. He was playing a centre back. Alioski, I wouldn't say he's the best defensively as well. And I mean, they're always going to struggle if you're playing players in positions they're not really comfortable or the best with either.
Yeah.
I think it's fair enough. Cool. Let's move on then to the last game. Obviously, it's the game we just watched. We're recording straight afterwards. West Brom 0, Aston Villa 3. So obviously Sam's first game in charge. What do you think?
He couldn't ask for a worse to start. I mean, losing 3-0 to Aston Villa.
I don't think it was bad, though. If you look now, yes, it's bad. But if you actually watch the game, they were difficult to break down, West Brom. And 2 of the goals came very late. It was actually a fantastic finish for Aston Villa's second goal. Lovely roll into the corner. And then a penalty, but I guess by then the game's gone. But they'll be all right when they under Sam, surely.
I mean, he bases his game on being hard to beat, as you've mentioned. I mean, to score a goal in the first 5 minutes, Allardyce would be fuming because I imagine he probably would have maybe wanted to see the late goal or nick a goal at the end. That's typical Sam Allardyce, and obviously it doesn't help with Liverpool being sent off as well. But then Villa having a goal disallowed as well. But then, like I said, the fantastic finish and then the penalty at the end, and maybe still there is positives to take out of it because it's only his first game and he's getting used to his players, but maybe if you give him his transfer window and getting defensive recruits that he wants, and we'll maybe see a different West Brom side.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Ellis? Have they got a chance?
Yeah, I think, there's no massive gap down there, is there? I mean, Arsenal could get pulled into it, so I think Allardyce will probably do his thing. They've at least got a chance. I think Villa as an attacking team are just really good, to be honest, aren't they? When you got like Grealish running at people and whatever, they're pretty hard to defend against. So again, there's no shame in losing to them this year. You can ask a Liverpool fan that.
And believe it or not, they're on the same amount of points as Chelsea. Aston Villa with a game in hand.
Oh, look at that.
That's crazy to think, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's going to take some time for Allardyce. Obviously, you don't expect him to do it on the first game. That's impossible. But we've seen him before when he went to, was it Sunderland? And the first couple of results didn't go well, did they? And then suddenly you saw the improvement. And then by the end, obviously, it was an absolute miracle he pulled off, which he's pulled off a few times, let's be honest. So be interesting to see how that pans out. But that's all the action for this week, guys. So thanks so much for listening. Do tune in to Extra Time. Obviously, we're going to do the Mondays nights games during that. You'll be there, won't you, Ben?
Just the 2 of us.
Yeah.
We can make it if we try. Just the 2 of us. You and I.
Beautiful.
Wow.
They've probably turned off by now, so they're not listening.
Yes.
But
Yeah, sorry, Ellis, piss off.
as I said before, do leave a review, guys. You get your chance, obviously, to be read out on the show. Check out our socials, follow us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Ta-ra.
Poodle pip.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.